Good evening, folks. Welcome back to Allergic to Stupidity. I think this is attempt number 6. On the last attempt, I said I'd lost track, and so I think I've really lost track. And I have this thing to say, and I'm not sure how to say it. I'm not sure how to put into words what I want to say. Because today, in watching the news and tracking things and everything that's gone on in the last 2 days, and touching bases with clients and things like that, I've just sat there and gone, I feel like somebody's pulled a rug out from underneath my feet. And I think a lot of the world is in the same boat, and that they're going, we don't know which way's up. Donald Trump is doing a Donald Trump thing, which is a lot of bluster, a lot of yelling and screaming. And so nobody's really quite sure which way he's going, which way's up, and what he really means. Like when he says something, how much is that honestly the truth? And so we never know. So we are unstable and stressed out, which you may notice me doing that a lot. I chew gum to deal with stress, gets gas in my stomach, and then it's got to come up. And sometimes it feels really good if I just turn the news off and ignore it. But then the reality is that when the truth comes out or I find out stuff because I haven't been keeping up with it, it's a bigger shock versus taking it a little bit at a time. Though sometimes it's easier if you just take it one big thing at a time, like at once. That's like taking cod liver oil. When I was a little girl, it was just easier if I took the whole spoonful once than sipping at it, because that was even 10 times worse. 3 cheers, there's now pills. There were not pills for cod liver oil when I was a little girl. I had to drink it. Were any of you were my age and had to take cod liver oil? So it's how do we approach this? How do we deal with all this uncertainty? And of course, because it is news and because we want to hear it, and people, the journalists want us to hear it because they know we want to hear it, everything that Donald Trump is doing is in our face. So planes are not being allowed to, he's deporting everybody and scurrying them out and sending them back to their countries and all the rest of it. And he's not necessarily treating them the way they should be treated, though some people were upset because they saw them in handcuffs and foot chains, and somebody quoted that that's normal procedure. So yes, it looks terrible, but that's the normal because they don't want the person to be taking off and going left. So it's quote a control, but it makes them look like they're criminals, like they belong in jail, and they're just illegally in the country. So they're deported. They don't go in front of a federal judge and they don't get sentenced jail time. They just don't belong here. Get out of our country, kind of mentality. So all of that in our face is very stressful and keeps us unbalanced and unstable because we don't know what's going to happen. And us in Canada, we are going, well, it's Monday. In 5 days, 6 days, he may be applying a 25% tariff on everything, which isn't going to hurt our pocketbooks in the beginning because it's the American citizens that are going to be paying that 25% tariff, but it's going to hurt us in jobs and industry because people will be cutting back because they haven't got it. So those of us who are self-employed, parents might be cutting back on the number of times they need a tutor because their money's tight. So it just gets to be that snowball effect. And so it keeps everybody on upside down and backwards. And how do we deal with it? And how do we create a plan when we don't know what's coming tomorrow? And that may be part of his logic or his modus operandi, the way he operates, is that keep people not sure which way he's coming. And that's not good for our mental health. at all. And I happen to be, and this is where this whole chit chat's coming from, I happened to trip upon a gentleman who is from the UK, and he's got, I think, 1.2 thousand, like just over 1,000 followers, which is fine. He's basically doing what I'm doing and talking out into cyberspace and letting people know how he feels, and it makes him feel good. He's releasing some of that stress and anxiety and things like that, but coming across actually very British, at least like my British friends. And his was 6 ways to stay happy in these uncertain times. And I really didn't get to listening to the 6 ways he'd come up with, because he said some of these will work for you and some of these won't. Use the ones you find work for you, and don't use the ones you don't find that are going to work for you. But what I liked about him in this talk, because the first part of his talk was, how did we get to this point? And I really liked that. And he sort of had 4 or 5 points. And the first point was the financial crisis of 2008. And he made a comment about he doesn't think we economically ever got 100% over that financial crisis of 2008. And I'm going, I agree with you. I've agreed with that for a long time. For about 10 years, I'm going, we've never got back to the way it was at the turn of the century, 2000, which seems strange that was a quarter of a century ago. But anyways, that we never got back to that stability of knowing that we have jobs. And that since that financial crisis, if you think about it, the governments have always been trying to cut corners. So in my perspective, putting an extra couple of kids in your classroom, right? So instead of hiring an extra teacher, we'll just put a TA in there. And that way we've got 2 adults for 30 kids. So we can say the teacher-student ratio is 1 to 15. Let's get rid of all the behavior classes. We'll put the kids into regular classes. That way they'll learn by osmosis and how to behave. And that one doesn't work, by the way. In case anybody wants to think that does not work. And it's little things like that since 2008. That when he was discussing it from a UK perspective, but I could see that in Canada too. That was the first one. The next one for him in UK was Brexit. That turned everything upside down. And the economy didn't go up. They had to create their own tariffs, their own trade agreements with the various countries in the EU. And at that point, Donald Trump was in business in his first time in office, and I noticed that Trudeau automatically, that's it. And he was over there making trade agreements with the UK immediately, which I thought, yes, we need a trade agreement for the Commonwealth countries. And so he explained how that really messed the UK up. But it would have also had a rippling effect, like the pebble in the pond. So there was 2. Financial crisis, Brexit. The next one was, and I run into people, yeah, but that was years ago, is COVID. Guys, COVID literally shut the world down. Whether you want to believe it was as bad as it was, or if you want whatever, it shut the world down. Literally, there was factories that closed, shuttered up, and kept the employees inside in China because they didn't want the employees going home, because they didn't want the spread of the virus, because there's a high population density, especially in Beijing. So everything got brought to a halt. Anybody who had kids in the system, or us teachers, we spent a year and a half, sometimes teaching online, sometimes teaching in the class, spreading the kids out as far as we could get them. So it went, and it did a large crunch economically and in shipping. And then, so he's going, there's the 3, and that, he said, caused that cost of living crisis we have going. He said, but the next thing, and he pointed out, people don't understand how much that war in Ukraine has caused issues and stress and strain and all the rest of it. That's just put everything on top of it. So you and I, or us as Canadians, or wherever you're listening from, have all the things that are happening in our own country. But now all our political leaders, whether you like your political leader or not, or you don't like the political leader south of here, it doesn't matter. These political leaders are now trying to figure out how to get our economy going forward. In the meantime, the world of economy is changing. Where it was heavy duty manufacturing, and like in the 50s, 60s, you walk in and you got a job, and maybe the only job you did was put light bulbs in there, or watch the light bulbs go through and say, okay, one of them is dead, and crack it and break it, or put the wheel on it forward, or tighten the bolts on. A lot of that's automated now, and so those jobs aren't there anymore. That kind of mentality, or that kind of workforce, that kind of economy is changing. And then we went into the information age, and it's changing, and now we're into AI, and it's every decade is changing faster and faster, and that's keeping us all upside down and backwards, because we turn around today and it's one way, we turn around tomorrow, it's a different day, different way, and that causes that increased stress, that causes that emotional imbalance, and we don't know what to do about it, and we don't know how to deal with it. And we've got the war in Ukraine, and we now have the war in Gaza, in Israel versus the Palestinians. And yes, there's quote a ceasefire. How long? In the meantime, Gaza has been destroyed. Trump comes along and says, well, we'll just tear it all down and we can build new houses there. I'm not knocking Trump on this one, but that is such a businessman's logic. It's like, we'll just rip it down, we'll build new ones. You're asking people to just destroy their whole way of life, and that whole world. That house was my great grandmother's, and that was my grandmother's, and like there's all that history connection, and it's like that would be like somebody just, well, let's just bulldoze your house, Bev. No, I didn't build the house. My dad built the house, and I have pictures of my dad building it and my siblings building it, helping hammering those nails. And it's just that, here's the simple solution. Well, your simple solution on business, on paper, may sound great, but life doesn't work that way. We'll just go down and rip down Buckingham Palace. Yeah, I don't think so. It's old and it's decrepit, and it's in the middle of a whole bunch of renos, but it's not that easy. So we have all those things that are happening, and it causes us to be stressed. And what this, getting back to my little man walking through the fields in the UK, his was, those things are there. Let's accept and acknowledge those so we know why we are stressed. Let's not point a finger and blame Trump or Putin or Trudeau or Polyev or any of that. Let's just, this is the way it is. Let's change those things we can change and accept the things we can't change and find ways to be happier. Let's do this, keep calm and carry on. Let's have the cup of tea. It was a picture I saw. Let's have the cup of tea on the destroyed buildings in London during the Blitz. It was such a British picture. The stereotypical British picture. It was just a lady sitting there with her cup of tea on a destroyed building in London, and she was enjoying the sun, right? I think that's his mentality. Is like, let me make the best of a really lousy situation. And I really just liked his attitude. So, as we're walking into February, right around the corner, let's just do that. Let's focus on the things we can do. Help out our friend, help out our neighbor, put a smile on their face. Know better times are coming. And do our little bit to make the world a little bit better today than it was tomorrow. Than it was yesterday, I should say. And smile, because Trump is going to keep doing his Trumpy thing, because that's Trump. That's what he did last time. People are warning that he's going to be more aggressive and angrier and, I wouldn't say meaner, but more pushy about the whole thing. But let's support our government when our government says that we're going to do A and B. So He throws the tariffs on. We already know that every premier and even Daniel Smith is starting to come around slowly um, about putting tariffs on American goods coming in. That's going to cost us more money. So I said in the last couple of days, find things that are coming in from other countries. That's all. Simple as that. We buy things from other countries. Support our federal leaders when they say we're going to come up with a tariff agreement. I think it's the new organization. The new organization is BRIC, BRIC. Brazil, Colombia is the C. Don't know what the R and the I is, but that group. Let's make a trade agreement with them. Let's make a trade agreement with our Commonwealth neighbors. Let's make trade agreements with. If he doesn't want to play ball with us, fine, we'll go play ball with somebody else. That's what I tell my kids in the school ground, or did tell them. Don't teach little people anymore. Just go play ball with somebody else. They don't want to play ball nicely, you go play ball with somebody else. There's always somebody who wants to play ball. So let's find ways to have that cup of tea on the destroyed building, figuratively, symbolically. Put a smile on your face, put your hand out and help each other. Find something good about every day. And support our political leaders, whether you like them or not. You know, like if we do end up with Pierre Poilievre as the next Prime Minister of Canada, or Mark Carney, because I think he's the one that's going to win, just the way it's going. But whoever our new Prime Minister is, support them. Don't sit there and growl and scream because you haven't got cheap gas, or you haven't got inexpensive food, or you haven't got what you want and life's not going the way you think it is. Support them, back them, and understand that in 4 years, if we want to get 4 years to Trump, and then things will slowly get back. And if we can just nurture our way through those 4 years, it will get better. Anyways, take care, have a smile, and go have a cup of tea with somebody.